Hey everyone, today we're covering two quick deck lists for Dash. This is with the introduction of the new Armory kit, which is going to unlock some pretty powerful potential for the hero for anyone who's familiar, not in the know, just about how strong this deck is with the Armory kit cards. Cerebellum Processor is a pretty nuts card, and while we could debate over its health in the game, we need to cover the list, right? So the first one is the more reasonable take, having a pretty lean boost package, playing for high octane value game plans, of course, with the introduction of the new cards as well, where you would play something like Sprocket Rocket before, now you're just playing Fast and Furious, and the rest of the deck is pretty, average, right? The only thing that maybe is new here that you haven't seen before is the introduction of Expedite and Med-X. These two cards are really powerful now because before, you have to think about this in context with Dash.io, right? Dio. So before, these cards were kind of cool because you could cheat an action point, which maybe meant that you got to play Spark with essentially Go Again, or you could cheat in like an extra pistol shot at the end. But for the most part, having two action points didn't mean anything in that deck. Extra gunshots at the end of your turn don't matter when your pistol is free, and High Octane just lets you dump all 6 counters off of it, right? These cards were not included before, right? We saw everything from like Outpace to Fender Bender, right? But of course, those were because of the Zen meta. But these cards have never really touched any list. Now, the biggest difference now is with Cerebellum Processor. If this is out, anytime that you have an extra action point, you get to draw a card and keep playing the game with Processor out, right? Because while this normally would take your action to draw the card and your turn would be over, which is still insanely broken, by the way, right? Just being able to boost out your entire hand every turn and at the end, draw a card off the Processor to Arsenal instead of sending your pistol, because once again, who cares? Because your pistol is going to get all dumped in for 12 anyway. But what it means that anytime that you crank something, right? So if these hit during your turn and you get to drop in something with crank it, get the action points, you're up to 2 action points now. Anytime you're doing that now, those just say go again, draw a card, right? So this is a 0 for 3 snatch with Go Again, and this is a 1 for 4 snatch with Go Again. These are probably like the newest addition that I think should be part of the core now with Processor. I've even hit and got to drop in Processor for free as well. Like the threat is just always there. These cards are really good now. Same reason for BIOS update. We could be running Pounder in this list probably for BIOS update. Synergy, actually, I probably will add it back in the list as either one of or 2 of in the blue slots when this video goes up, because we have more equity with it. But anytime you get to, once again, crank in something off of BIOS update, you're drawing a card with Processor. And if you get to drop in Processor with BIOS update, it's even more insane, right? Everything else here is probably what you're familiar with. A bunch of cheap boost cards. These are all vanilla attacks with Go Again, but they're helpful for your deck because with Dash's ability, you're able to cycle through a bunch of your decks, so that way you can find the items to play off the top, cheat in your action points, essentially have a 5 intellect hero every single turn, because you're getting your 4 cards plus whatever you could play off the top of the deck. And then our massive payoff, right, is High Octane. So High Octane, we're going to boost a bunch, draw a bunch of cards with Processors, and then get to fire off our pistol a bajillion times. I guess I should cover these cards for anyone who's probably new to the hero, right? I guess I could also do an introductory style video, probably as a separate thing, kind of similar to what I did for Pistol Dash like a few years ago, because I'm assuming there's gonna be a lot of people who are gonna be new to Dash.io, especially with the Armory kit being introduced, probably a lot of new players, so seems like it'd be helpful. But quick refresher, anytime you're playing an item with Symbiosis Shot, you're getting a counter that you can drop off. And this is not once per turn, so anytime you have extra action points and you have multiple counters, you can shoot this more than once. Our sideboard is pretty standard, right? We have an extra backup protocol along with max velocities for more fatigue-based matchups. We have Dissolving Shield for on-hit style decks, so things like Assassin, maybe the Mirror, but also Azalea as well. Heist, along with the Goliath Gauntlet for non-blocking aggro decks, so you're gonna get a little bit more value out of the on-hit, get something back. And then, we gotta cook for a second, because we have TikTok clock. I don't know if I've seen a little bit of discussion looking at the TCG player sale history. Seems like some people are in the know, but just in case if anyone is unfamiliar with this, because this was a bulk rare, bulk majestic from Bright Lights, this card is the Mirror Breaker. If you expect Dash.io to be popular, which you should, and you are playing Dash.io, you need this card in your deck. This card is so cracked in the Mirror. This is like way better than Boom Grenade, right? So for instance, quick sideboard tip in the Mirror, just drop out your red Boom Grenades for red TikTok clocks. If your opponent does not have TikTok clock in the Mirror, you are going to blast them. Imagine Boom Grenade, but it also destroys your opponent's Cerebellum Processor and their Teklo core, and maybe a Boom Grenade they have left over whatever. And this card is so gross. You can maybe play in some other matchups because there are some decks that care about items. Verdant should not be playing the health potions into you because that is not reliable into this deck. But if for some reason they were, you could play TikTok Clock and destroy their potions. You can destroy E-Pots. That's like super niche, right? You probably don't care about that. And in most of those matchups, you probably would rather be running Boom Grenade Red. But in the mirror, like this card is a house against any mech. This is a house. This is probably the most powerful on hit that the deck has access to if you just look at what it's doing. And then it's mech on mech violence. So have fun, put that in your deck for the upcoming season because she will be popular. And we have AB3. So that's the list for reasonable, sane people. Obviously, I think there's some things that maybe you can tweak around with this. Like maybe you don't want bias update. Maybe you want a different sideboard plan. But this is like for someone who's like, yes, this is rational. Seems like a good starting place for a list, right? We're playing the new legs because they block for 1 in their Achilles. We're running adaptive flighting because block 3 is really good because now you have a fridge for 3, 5, 6, 8. Okay, so it's kind of crazy, right? That's 1 better than Zen, assuming that you're doing the galvanized trigger. So we need a fridge now. That lets us just block a CNC, erase face. We don't care. We pop off. We blast. Okay, this is for reasonable people. Now, if you're an absolute psycho, if you're, this is for the real freaks. This is for the real creatures. We got system reset. So we're gonna have a montage at some point in the video. It may come up on screen now. I may just throw it in this B-roll with like some lo-fi beats and you can chill out and watch me draw half my deck. This card is nuts. Now it adds more variance, allows you to get disrupted like crazy, and it also is iffy into fatigue. But what this card can do is it can do something I have not seen before, which is let you play like 10 cards in a turn. Like when you have a system reset turn, it feels like you're playing Zen. It feels like you are doing something that you should not be doing. So system reset is going to blank all of your items, right? And then they're going to come back in and you're going to get to re-crank them, right? Because let's take a look at processor. It's on the enter, so it's going to re-enter. So if you have like 3 processors out and you pay 3 for system reset, you get to re-crank all 3 Cerebellum processors, go up to 3 action points, and then draw up to 3 cards now, right? Assuming you got nothing else going on. So that's already pretty good, right? Like that's like turning 2 cards into 3. You need some setup, right? Which is why there's a bit of a problem with this, right? Like this is easy to disrupt, and also it adds a bit more variance because like this just takes any good position and solidifies it as a win. This is like any game where your opponent is kind of behind, but maybe they have a chance to get back in. If your power turn also involves system reset, they are done. The game is basically over. But it does mean that, you know, you're adding a card that only works when it synergizes with the rest of your board, but it is a yellow block 3, so that's actually why I don't think it's even that bad. We're also trying to one of Optical Monocle, replacing the Tekla core, because the biggest thing at this point is finding the system resets and finding your high octane. So while they are good individually, the most egregious turns that this deck will produce involve the combination of high octane and system reset, because you're going to high octane, draw a bunch of cards, keep on boosting. If your processors are out, then you'll always know when system reset is on top of the deck, and you'll have like 3-4 action points banked. So you just keep on boosting until you see system reset, close the chain, draw off the processor or processors if you have multiple, reset all of them, keep on drawing until you find another system reset on the top, because you're always gonna have information at the top of your deck. Grab it again, you're boosting a bajillion times, you're always going to be at 6 counters because resetting these is just going to double your counter. So there's even combo turns. Some of these B-roll clips I'll throw up at some point are going to be poorly sequenced. Like if you dig into them, I'm misplaying because I'm missing the fact that I can keep on shooting, play the system reset to go back up to the 6, play out the rest of my combo turn, and then still dump all 6 counters off of the gun. This just turns things into semi-OTKs. I've gotten all the way up to 40 damage on 1 turn with this like combination. So this is insane. Like it's really powerful. However, if you're playing, like I said, if you're playing a deck that can disrupt it, they're kind of cooked. And because of that variance nature, it does maybe make the deck a little bit more weak. but man, these things look degen when they synchronize correctly. So I wanted to mainly include this because people gotta know about System Reset. They need to test it. Someone who has more time than me, who's a better deck builder than me, should take this, run with it, and then figure out if this list is good or not. Our sideboard is relatively the same, except we have a new card. We have Quantum Processor. Now, Quantum Processor used to suck. It might still suck, but I've actually had pretty good success with it in the System Reset build because this lets you basically cheat more action points, lets you rebalance things. It synergizes with the System Reset, being able to re-buy itself into the field, right? And like, it does actually synergize pretty well with the processors because once again, anytime that you can crank an action point in, you're drawing a card, which isn't everything that we have to evaluate with the Dash.io cards. Before, we have to take that out the window because of processor. So anything before that gained you an action point was really mid because it just meant you were shooting your pistol once or you were playing Spark to get core and drawing it like a new card with an action point. None of that matters anymore because anytime that you can get an action point, you're probably a processor. You have 3 copies of Spark, you have 3 copies of processor, you can play processor off the top of the deck. You're always 1 card deeper in your deck than anyone else in the game because you're able to see the top card and play the top card. You will find processors so fast. When you find the first processor, the second one is very easy to find. And that's the overall philosophy with this deck, is that once you find one of these power cards, once you find one processor, once you find one high octane, once you find one System Reset, it is so easy to find the rest. They just seamlessly blend together because of how much you're drawing and your information and knowledge at the top of your deck. And we're also running on 1 of Optical Monocle, like I said, so that we can dig even harder, because if you can chain System Reset multiple times in a turn, your opponent might just be dead on the spot. This card, like I said, in combination with High Octane, can produce some of the most degenerate stuff I have seen in a fat minute. And it's on par with Zen. The deck overall is on par with Zen, to be perfectly honest. This deck is incredible. The average values I'm getting in these games are insane. And the damage output's crazy too. It plays efficiently turn to turn, but also has these incredible spike turns. Now, the normal version has really good spike turns, don't get me wrong, but the spike turns in this are just actually lethal. They're like actually pseudo combo turns, which makes this deck more pseudo combo, like aggro combo, which is very similar in line to Zen. So if you like that kind of playstyle, play this like absolutely sicko list and probably lose some games because you just like drew like all your System Resets together and it bricks you, or like you were playing too hard for the System Reset turn and like it didn't work out. It's very likely that maybe this 3 goes down to 2 potentially. And Quantum Processor is very cool in this deck, but maybe it does need to get replaced with something else, but I need to put that out there because people need to test this card. I don't think it synergizes as well in a build like this, but I think specifically with how much you want to crank, how relevant System Reset is with the deck, the fact you're drawing multiple cards means that if you, let's say, crank in an item on your System Reset turn, get an action point, draw a card off processor, whatever, draw a bunch more cards with System Reset. This goes back online, which means that you can re-crank another item in, right? So like when you would normally draw an item to processor at the end of your turn, you can just draw the item and then just instant it in with Quantum Processor and keep going. You just gotta keep going. You gotta keep playing the game. It's so crazy. It synergizes so well with the deck right now, and the only reason why it's really only good in the System Reset deck is because of how much you're drawing, right? So being able to blink in a bunch of items is really important, especially when you're resetting it multiple times in a turn, mind you. So this is not once per turn in a System Reset deck, right? Neither is processor. These are not once per turn actions because you're blinking them and then reactivating them in the same turn. But the other thing too is it increases your crank density. And the other thing too is it only gets 1 steam counter, which is not a lot. It's not a lot. If this had 2, I think we would actually consider it probably in the other build as well. Most likely without question. But because it only comes in with 1, it normally means it's not staying around long enough by itself. Now with System Reset, it will stay around long enough, which means that it gets a lot more value in this version of the deck. So I think it has a place in here for now. Could be replaced, of course. But I need to get this deck out here for people. So have fun. Go nuts. Let me know how it goes if you're changing anything about the list. But this is what I'm probably looking at. One of these 2 options going into the PQ season once the deck drops. Probably going to lean towards this, but I got foil System Reset, so I may have some fun and try to just 40-0 some, or 36-0. Not. I'll probably be really low, but I just mean drop my opponent from like 40 to 0, with something like this. Not literally, but it does get close. But until next time, thank you for watching.